video and address the question, which camera should you buy if you're looking at the Canon 7D Mark II or the Canon 70D? Now, I've only had the 7D Mark II in my hands for a few days. This is my early opinion on it, but I'm already getting a lot of questions of why would you buy one versus the other, and I thought I should take a few moments and share my thoughts so far. The first thing, I always like to kind of give you a bottom line or a spoiler of my review early on, and I want you to hit the thumbs up button if you appreciate that. Here's what I have to say. If you come to me and say, which of these two cameras should I buy? My default answer is going to be the 70D. It's a really nice camera with enough professional level features for plenty of room to grow as a photographer, and it's still got that kind of approachable, easy to use interface. That touchscreen, articulating touchscreen, and the video functions all work very nicely. Only if you say, am I seriously considering shooting higher speed action, sports, wildlife photography, and or need a camera that's going to be out in all kinds of conditions, especially the wetter ones, then I'll say consider the 7D Mark II. The 7D Mark II is really built for speed and to take abuse. It's got that 10 frames per second. It has an autofocus system that matches that 10 frames per second, giving you in-focus shots again and again and again. I'm really impressed with that from what I've seen in my limited testing so far. And it's got that magnesium alloy construction underneath its polycarbonate, and it is seriously weather sealed. But let's take a few moments and dive deeper into the similarities and the differences between these two cameras. As I mentioned, the 7D Mark II is very weather sealed, one of the most weather sealed cameras currently on the market, and it has a very strong magnesium alloy skeleton inside. The 70D does not have that magnesium alloy skeleton. You've just got polycarbonate, so it's not going to be able to withstand the abuse quite as much. It is weather sealed at the level of the previous 7D, so about 4 times less than the current 7D Mark II if we take Canon's marketing speak completely at face value. The backs of the cameras are very similar, except of course that the 70D has an articulating touch screen. We have no articulating touch screen over here on the 7D Mark II, but we do have some more pro level features and controls. The set dial and the wheel around it are nice and big, and the set dial has a feature that I haven't heard many other people talk about that allows for silent control during movie shoot. We've got a new bit of button here, this little thumb selector, and of course the joystick in the middle that allows rapid selection of one of the 65 focus points, but I'm getting ahead of myself, that is in here in the 7D Mark II. There's one other cool feature about these two buttons right here on the back of the 7D Mark II that I'll talk about. The 70D I mentioned has got that articulating touch screen. Otherwise the buttons are kind of a blend of the earlier 60D and the T5i. Again, enough professional level features. We only have one custom button on the dial, whereas the 7D Mark II, we have 3 custom functions that we can set up to remember settings within the camera. Holding both in the hand, the 7D Mark II does feel more substantial and it is a little bit heavier. It feels a little nicer to me in the hand than the 70D, but very similar in size, shape, and weight. Not a huge difference. A little bit bigger on the 7D Mark II. Let's talk a little bit about the features now of these two cameras. The 7D Mark II has 65 cross-type autofocus points. That's a huge number of autofocus points, and the fact that they are all the high accuracy cross type is really impressive. That coupled with that 10 frames a second that I mentioned at the beginning, we have a camera that can do an incredible burst and over the course of that burst have those pictures in focus if your subject is moving fast. That is something that most of the mirrorless cameras that offer bursts in a similar range, we even have some higher, 10, 12, 15, autofocusing system behind those bursts of images aren't quite as good, and so you're not going to see as many in focus. Do you need that much? Well, the Canon 70D offers what, about 7, which is an impressive amount. Let's listen to both of those quickly. I've done this already in my other tests, but other videos. There is 10 frames a second, and what we'll get to in a second is the fact that it's not so much the frames per second. So you can see there's a difference noticeable, but it's not a huge difference. 70D is certainly capable enough for high school sports and some wildlife. But it's that autofocusing system that's behind the burst rate that is impressive, and the buffer. Well, when we're shooting with a fairly fast card over here on the 70D, I can get about 10 to 12 frames, full resolution raw files before I start to hear a slowdown in the buffer. Over here on the 7D Mark II, you're supposed to get about 31. In my real world testing, I get mid-20s. So it depends a lot on the information coming in, and you can get 31 if you put the lens cap on, so it's not processing any information at all. JPEGs, another story. Thousands of JPEGs before that buffer starts to run up if you have a good card in here, and not quite as many on the 70D side. So again, you can see where this camera is really suited for those people who need a deep buffer with fast frame rate that is going to allow them to get a lot of shots to make sure that they get the shot they want when the action is moving faster. The one other point that I want to make about the autofocus system of the 7D Mark II is that center focus point is cross-type all the way up to f8. That allows you to throw on some really long focal length lenses and teleconverters, because remember, when you use a teleconverter, you decrease what the maximum aperture can be. And up at f8, you can use a teleconverter plus built-in teleconverters to get some amazingly long focal lengths and still have a high accuracy center point. You cannot do that on the 70D. You can't do that on the 5D Mark III either as well, I think. The amount of control you have over the autofocus system. The 70D is pretty simple. There is really no control over the autofocus system other than what point you select and what focus mode you're in. The 7D Mark II devotes whole menu tabs to the autofocus system, acceleration and deceleration of the subjects you're shooting, how many of the different focus points you want to be able to use and to select, and also over in video mode you can adjust the sensitivity and the speed of your autofocus tracking during video. Those are not features available to you on the 7D. And that is something that you do find on the 5D Mark III and of course the 1DX. 7D Mark II offers built-in GPS, so when that is on, your battery life is going to take a little bit of a hit, but it automatically tags your photos with the location. That's similar to the 6D as well. On the 7D, you do not have that option. You need to have a little independent GPS device or use your smartphone or something like that to track where you are. Intervalometer. When you first glance, you look at the intervalometer, it looks like it's limited to 99 photos at the most, which is a very puny number for any type of interval shooting that you want to do. But really, if you just leave it on 00, it gives you a little message that it's unlimited, meaning it'll keep shooting until it runs out of battery life. You could certainly replace and have that functionality. Well, I was going to pull up the intervalometer down there, but it's messy. With a simple intervalometer or a trigger trap, which of course gives you a lot more options, but it's nice to have that built right into the camera. You also have built-in GPS. However, the 70D does have Wi-Fi for both pulling images off and for remote control of photos only. Video, it doesn't work. If you really only care about pulling images off and not the remote control capabilities, you can easily add Wi-Fi to your 7D Mark II by using an iFi card. Is it disappointing that it's not built in? Sure. But I'll be honest with you, and I'm not saying this to come across as a Canon apologist. When recently in Italy, shooting with my 5D Mark III every day, almost every day, I love using the iFi card. To me, this is still way better than any wireless device that I've used or any wireless system in any camera, because once it's set up, a little hinky to get it set up, but once it's set up, and because the 7D Mark II offers dual card slots, you can have the iFi card sitting right in there, shoot JPEGs to it, large JPEGs, or you could shoot RAWs to it if you want. And when I shoot a picture that I want to transfer, all I have to do is hit the rate button. And that button's right here. And that then signals to the camera, to the iFi card, to send that to any wireless device within range that's been set up. My phone in my pocket, and that's all I have to do. One press and it's over. It would be nice if it was built in for that option as well, but it's not. As I mentioned, dual card slots as well, and so you can throw that iFi card in there. One other that takes us to the professional level is that the focus screen is replaceable. It comes standard with the f5.6, which means that it's just set up for normal use. But if you're going to be frequently focusing, manually focusing at f2.8 or faster, there is an additional focusing screen that you can have put in instead that will make your life a little bit easier. Let's talk a little bit about the video features of these two cameras, and this is probably the #1 disappointment for most videographers that were hoping for a really serious video feature camera, and the 7D Mark II really is not that. It does offer some improvements over earlier Canon models, like it now will do 60 frames per second, 1080p, 60 frames per second. It does have improved dual pixel autofocus. Remember, one of the really impressive things of the 70D is how smoothly it focuses during both live view and shooting video, basically the same, using the same focusing system. The 7D Mark II continues that and has improved slightly on it. As I said, it gives you that ability to adjust the speed of the autofocus during video as it moves from one object to another, or the tracking. In general, I have found it to be overall improved, faster, snappier, with even less hesitation than the 70D did. And again, I was really blown away with the 70D, about a year ago. I'm still impressed with it compared to other cameras. But one downside is when you shoot at 60 frames a second, you do not have the option of having AI servo on. Why? I don't know. It just simply tells you not available, and it turns itself off. I don't know. You have to go down to 30 frames a second or shoot at 720p and 60 frames a second to be able to use that AI servo. It's a little funny in that they've really touted that AI servo during video mode being improved in the 7D Mark II, but yet there it is being left out of their higher frame rate offerings. You also have a few more, where you now have MP4 and MOV files in here, and you have a light, highly compressed MP4 file that you can shoot with in the 7D Mark II, and that's not available to you here. Do you want that? Well, if you really need to shoot for long periods of time and your card space is limited, then that might be an option. I'll tell you, for making cinematic pulls and just focusing in general in video, that touchscreen on the 70D is really nice. You touch where you want to focus, and then you touch where you want to focus next, and it does that nice pull in between them. Without a touchscreen, the 7D Mark II, it's very difficult to do that. You can use the little thumb wheel on the back, and if you are smooth, without being too jiggly, you can get it to move from point to point pretty easily. But the issue is, if it's going to be crossing over other subjects on its way, it may try to focus on those, and that's very distracting, where you would not have that issue with the 70D, as you touch here and then touch there to focus, and there's no movement in between, just simply focusing. Now, as I said, you can change those focusing. 7D Mark II does also offer HDMI, I'm getting ahead of myself, headphone jack. So you can monitor audio in real time, and of course there is a microphone jack as well. It's got clean HDMI out, USB 3.0, and it comes with this nice little doodad that screws into the side here that keeps you from wiggling any of these connections. Canon has specifically said that the USB 3.0 replacement would be difficult and expensive, so you want to be really careful about not jerking that around when you're using it, and this little cord connector will allow you to do that safely and keep it from getting in the way. Saving the least important for last, the least important differences between these two, and that is your image quality and your video quality. They have said that the 7D Mark II is a completely redesigned sensor right down to the photo cells. That might be true. I see very little differences. They both share the same 20 megapixel rating or size, but quality-wise, I see very little difference between these two. There may be about 1/3 of a stop better. I'll share some sample images for you. And in the mid-range, like 1600 to 6400 ISO, I can say the 7D Mark II is better. Not enough that I would say this is the camera you should buy. It's not that much of a difference. You're going to get a better quality by buying the 70D and spending your savings on a nice prime lens. That's going to give you a better quality. But, there's a difference there. These are mostly JPEGs straight out of camera that you're looking at. RAW files are still a little tricky to deal with, and so I'll be back with some more careful analysis between the two. Video, very similar. Quality is about the same on both. I've heard some people saying that moire is less of an issue on the 7D Mark II. That's that kind of optical illusion you get in finely repeating patterns. I have to say it looks about the same to me in both of these cameras. Not really a big difference there. That's it. That's all I got for you right now in talking about these two cameras and which you should buy. I said at the beginning, for most people, it's still going to remain the 70D. It's a very nice, all-around, and capable camera. But there are those who need or want this camera, and it gives you that increased focusing ability, a really fast burst rate, and the ability to withstand some abuse, and a couple other features that may be nice and well. What did I leave out? What did I miss? What is important to you about these two cameras? I'm happy to answer questions as I continue to work on a good full review of the 7D Mark II and a discussion about where it fits in among the 70D, other Canon cameras, and of course the greater ecosystem when we start to compare it against things like Sony and Samsung's little NX, not little, and of course Nikon as well. Leave a comment right down below, and if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe, the thumbs up button, and the subscribe button. Those are the easiest way to thank me for my time. The 7D is in stock at B&H and Adorama and other places. Links to buy are right down below. I love B&H. They are great and have helped me out so many times. You just give them a call or click that link down below. They are the best people in the camera business. Thanks so much for watching. If you've got any questions,